When a millionaire saw a struggling mother humiliated for being $1.27 short, he tried to help. Her fierce response destroyed him and revealed a truth about poverty that would shatter everything he believed. The morning James Parker's carefully constructed world began to crack. He was thinking about leverage ratios, not about the woman counting coins at the bakery counter, not about the little boy pressing his face against the glass display case, breath fogging the surface as he stared at pastries shaped like tiny trains. Certainly not about what it meant that he could spend $12 on a croissant without blinking while someone else was fishing through a worn wallet, hands shaking, searching for enough change to buy their child a single moment of joy. James was 30 years old and worth $50 million, and he'd earned every cent of it by not thinking about things that didn't concern him. The line at Maison Laurent moved with the efficiency of wealth. No one dawdled here. You knew what you wanted. You paid. You left. Time was money, and everyone in this space understood that fundamental truth. James checked his phone. Email from his CFO about the Patterson acquisition. He typed back with his thumbs, barely looking up. The woman ahead of him smelled like lavender and expensive leather. Her shoes probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Behind him, a man in a tailored suit was having a hushed phone conversation about stock options. This was James's world. Clean, efficient, earned. He'd fought like hell to stand in places like this. 12 years old, standing in the social worker's office after his parents died, listening to strangers decide his fate like he was a piece of furniture being allocated to storage. Foster home after foster home, each one teaching him the same lesson. You're alone, you're disposable, and nobody's coming to save you. So he'd saved himself. Full scholarship to MIT, graduated at 21, started his venture capital firm at 25 with money he'd made consulting and coding. First million at 27, first 10 million at 29. He'd done it right. No handouts, no excuses, pure meritocracy. If he could claw his way up from nothing, anyone could. That's what he believed. That's what made it all make sense. The line moved forward. James pocketed his phone and glanced at the display case, already knowing what he'd order. The same thing every Tuesday morning for the past 2 years. Pain au chocolat and an Americano. Ritual, consistency, control. That's when he noticed them. The woman was young, late 20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She wore scrubs under a thin jacket that had seen better years, and there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. But it was the way she held herself that caught his attention. Straight spine despite obvious exhaustion. Quiet dignity wrapped around her like armor. The boy beside her couldn't have been more than 8. Small for his age, with serious eyes and hands that moved in precise, repetitive patterns. He was fixated on the display of special pastries, delicate things shaped like locomotives, decorated with meticulous fondant work. Tommy, baby, pick one, okay? The woman's voice was soft, meant only for the boy. Just one. We have to be quick. The boy didn't respond verbally. He pointed, his whole body radiating focused intensity at a particular pastry, a blue engine with tiny sugar wheels. The woman nodded, relief flickering across her face. Good choice, love. That's a good choice. She approached the counter where Sophie Grant stood. Her expression perfectly composed in that particular way service workers learn to arrange their faces. But James knew Sophie's real story. He'd reviewed her background when he'd invested in this place last year. Foster care. Clawed her way up, just like him. Maybe that's why he'd liked her. One of the train pastries, please, the woman said quietly. The blue engine. Sophie's eyes flicked down to the mother, then to the boy. Assessment happening in milliseconds. $8.50. The woman opened her wallet. James watched as she counted bills, then coins, quarters, dimes, nickels. Her fingers moved faster, searching the wallet's creases as if she could manifest the missing money through sheer will. The boy, Tommy, started making a low humming sound. Not distressed yet, but anticipatory. Excited. The woman's voice faltered. She counted again. I thought I had... Could you, maybe, just this once? Ma'am, the price is $8.50. Sophie's voice had changed. It carried an edge now, something sharp and performative. This isn't a discount bakery. James should have looked away. This wasn't his business. But something in the woman's face stopped him. The way she swallowed her pride, the way her eyes went bright with unshed tears, the way she instinctively moved her body to shield her son from the embarrassment. "I have $7.23, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it's not enough. I'm sorry. I miscalculated. This is Maison Laurent." Sophie's voice rose, just enough for others to hear. "We maintain certain standards. If you can't afford our products, perhaps you should try the grocery store on 9th. The humming intensified. Tommy's hands began to flap, his body swaying. James recognized the signs now. The boy was on the spectrum, and his careful world was starting to fracture. "Tommy, it's okay, baby. We're going—" The woman reached for her son's hand, but he pulled away, the humming turning to high-pitched distress sounds. People were staring now. The lavender perfume woman in front of James had turned to watch, her expression a mixture of pity and discomfort. The suited man behind him had ended his phone call. "Please," the mother whispered. "We're leaving. I'm sorry. Tommy, come on, we'll get something else, okay? But Tommy was unraveling. The sounds he made weren't quite crying, but something deeper, primal, the sound of a child who couldn't understand why the bright blue engine he'd been promised was being taken away. Sophie's face had gone hard. "Ma'am, you need to control your child or leave the premises." Something inside James shifted. He didn't think. He stepped forward, pulled his credit card from his wallet, and placed it on the counter. "Put it on mine." All eyes turned to him. Sophie's face transformed instantly, her mouth reshaping into a professional smile. "Oh, Mr. Parker, of course, right away." But the mother had gone rigid. She turned, and James found himself looking into eyes that burned with something fiercer than gratitude. "No," James blinked. "I'm sorry?" "No." She said it louder this time, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her face. "I don't need your charity. It's just a pastry. It's not what?" Her voice cut like glass. "Not a big deal, not important. I know it's nothing to you. That's exactly the problem." Sophie reached for the card. "Ma'am, Mr. Parker is being generous. I didn't ask him to be generous." The mother's hands were shaking now, but she'd gathered Tommy close, holding him through his distress. "I asked for basic human decency. I asked if maybe, just once, someone could show a little flexibility. Instead, I got humiliated. And now, I'm supposed to be grateful that some stranger swoops in to save me? You want to know what that feels like? Like I'm so pathetic that I'm not even worth basic respect. Like I only matter when someone else's money is involved. That's not—" James started, but she was already moving, guiding her son toward the door. "Come on, Tommy. We're going home." The boy's distress had shifted to confusion, his hands reaching back toward the display case. But his mother kept moving, spine straight, refusing to look back. The door chimed as they left. The shop fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then the lavender woman turned back to the counter, and the man behind James resumed his phone conversation. And Sophie processed James's order with practiced efficiency, and the world moved on as if nothing had happened. But James stood there, card still in hand, pastry bag already forgotten. Sophie handed him his coffee. "Some people just don't know how to accept help." She said it sympathetically, like they were on the same team, like they understood something the poor woman didn't. James took his coffee without responding. His reflection stared back at him from the shop window. Expensive suit, Italian leather shoes, watch that cost more than that woman probably made in 6 months. He'd meant well, hadn't he? So why did he feel like he'd just done something unforgivably cruel? Outside, through the glass, he could see the woman kneeling on the sidewalk, holding her son, rocking him gently as he calmed. Her lips moved, probably reassuring him, promising him something else, some other small joy to replace the one she couldn't afford. James left the bakery with his $12 croissant and his $4 coffee, and walked to his Tesla parked at the meter. He'd spent $16 without thinking, the same way he did every Tuesday. That woman had been short by $1.27. He sat in his car for a long moment, not starting the engine. The croissant sat untouched in its bag. He should eat it. He should check his email. He should get to the office. He had meetings all morning. Instead, he sat there thinking about the look in that woman's eyes. Not gratitude, fury. Not at him specifically, but at the whole system that made her count coins for a pastry while he could buy the entire bakery without checking his bank balance. His phone buzzed. His CFO again. Patterson meeting in 45. You coming? James stared at the message. He'd been planning this acquisition for months. Patterson Technologies was a small startup, innovative but struggling. James would buy it, gut it, absorb what was valuable, and dissolve the rest. 15 people would lose their jobs, but that was business. Creative destruction. The market was efficient. If they couldn't compete, they didn't deserve to survive. Meritocracy. Just like the woman in the bakery. If she couldn't afford $8.50 for a pastry, maybe she should work harder, get better jobs, stop having children she couldn't support. That's what James would have said yesterday. But today, sitting in his Tesla with his uneaten croissant, James couldn't shake the memory of her hands counting those coins. The way she'd tried so hard to give her son one small moment of happiness. The way she'd been crushed not by poverty itself, but by the humiliation of it being made public. He started the car. But instead of driving to his office in the financial district, James found himself heading somewhere else entirely. He didn't know what he was looking for. He just knew that something had broken open inside him, and he couldn't close it back up. The boy's face stayed with him. Those serious eyes, the precise way he'd pointed at the blue engine, the trust that his mother would make it happen. She'd tried. She'd really tried. And James, in trying to help, had only made everything worse. James didn't go to the Patterson meeting. He drove aimlessly through Boston, the uneaten croissant growing cold in its bag. His phone exploded with messages, CFO, assistant, board members wondering where he was. A $30 million deal hanging in the balance, and James Parker had simply vanished. Something had lodged beneath his ribs, sharp and uncomfortable, refusing to be ignored. I only matter when someone else's money is involved. He ended up at his office building anyway, muscle memory taking over. Parker Ventures, 23rd floor, corner office with harbor views. He'd built this. He should feel proud every time he saw it. Today, it just looked cold. James parked in his reserved spot, his name on a metal plaque, another small symbol of arrival. He rode the elevator up, nodded at Jennifer, and closed himself in his office. The croissant went in the trash. He stared at his computer without seeing it. The woman's words kept circling back. He genuinely thought he was helping. See problem? Deploy solution? Move on. Efficient? Effective. But she hadn't wanted his solution. She'd wanted respect. Dignity. For Sophie to be kind without needing a wealthy man's intervention to make it happen. His phone rang. Marcus Wellington. Parker, heard you missed the Patterson meeting. Everything okay? Fine. Something came up. Must have been important. Davidson's livid. Marcus paused. You free Friday? Bringing investors to the Essex Club. Could use your golden touch. The Essex Club. Where men like Marcus, born wealthy, privately educated, made deals with men exactly like them. James was allowed in because he had money now, but he'd never quite belong. Maybe. You sound off, man. I'm fine. He hung up. Through his window, Boston stretched endlessly. How many people were counting coins right now? How many were $1.27 short of something that meant everything? James had stopped thinking about that years ago. Survival mode required tunnel vision. Focus, climb, ignore distractions. Once at the top, he'd earned the right to stop looking back. But maybe he'd just trained himself not to see. His calendar alert chimed. Another meeting. Conference room B. James ignored it. He looked at the clock. 6:47 p.m. Hours wasted. Accomplishing nothing. He had responsibilities, commitments, a company to run. He gathered his things and headed for the elevator. The parking garage was nearly empty. His Tesla sat alone under flickering light. That's when he heard it. Wheels squeaking. Chemical smell of cleaner. A woman emerged from the stairwell pushing a janitorial cart. Mop, bucket, supplies. Gray uniform, hair pulled back, earbuds in. Not looking up. Not her. Different build. But James stood there anyway, watching. How many times had he passed people like her without seeing? How many times had entire human beings become invisible furniture? James's phone buzzed. Jennifer. You okay? You missed 3 meetings. He typed back, working from home tomorrow. The elevator arrived. The woman maneuvered her cart inside, never looking at him once, and the doors closed. James drove home to his Back Bay apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, a space that never felt like home. He'd bought it for the address, for what it represented. Tonight, it just felt empty. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, the woman's face, the boy's distress, Sophie's cruelty, and underneath it all, a question he couldn't answer. If he'd really pulled himself up by his bootstraps, why had it required so many invisible people holding the ladder steady? 3 days later, James was still thinking about it. He'd gone through the motions, meetings, emails, calls. He'd salvaged Patterson, closed acquisitions, reviewed projections. On paper, everything was fine. The company thrived. But James kept finding himself distracted, looking at faces he'd normally ignore. Security guard, barista, delivery driver. When had he stopped seeing people? Thursday evening, he stayed late deliberately. Mostly he wanted to see who cleaned his floor after hours. At 10:15 p.m., the elevator dinged. Footsteps. Vacuum starting in the hallway. James opened his office door. A man in his 60s worked methodically. Vacuum creating neat carpet lines. Gray uniform. Practiced movements. Invisible. "Evening," James said. The man, startled, turned off the vacuum. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Parker. Didn't realize you were here. I can come back." "No, it's fine." James paused. "Been working here long?" "About 4 years." "Good steady work. What's your name?" "William. William Chen." Chen. James's mind flickered to Mrs. Chen, the social worker who'd helped him at 14. No relation, probably, but the coincidence settled over him anyway. "Well, William, thank you. I know it's not glamorous work, but we'd notice if you didn't do it." William's smile deepened. "Appreciate that, sir. Most folks don't really see us." The words landed like a punch. "Yeah," James said quietly. "I'm starting to realize that." 4 years. William had cleaned his floor for 4 years, and James had never once acknowledged him. Never learned his name. Never seen him as anything but machinery. The parking garage was almost empty. James's footsteps echoed. That's when he saw her. Same gray uniform. Same cart. But under harsh fluorescent lights, he could see her face clearly. The woman from the bakery. She scrubbed graffiti off a concrete pillar, earbuds in, completely absorbed. Her cart held supplies organized with the precision of someone who took pride in invisible work. James's heart hammered. He should walk away, but his feet carried him forward anyway. "Excuse me." She didn't hear. He moved closer. "Excuse me," louder this time. She turned, pulling out one earbud. Her eyes widened in recognition, then hardened. "You've got to be kidding me. I didn't know you worked here. I swear, I wasn't." "Following me?" She turned back, scrubbing harder. "Leave me alone. I work here. 23rd floor, Parker Ventures." She paused briefly, then kept scrubbing. "Good for you. How long have you been cleaning this building? Why does it matter?" "It matters." She stopped, turned to face him fully. Even exhausted, even angry, she held herself with that same dignity. 3 years. Overnight shift, 10 to 3. Then I go to my other job. You want to count up all the ways my life is hard so you can feel better about throwing money at me? That's not. James stopped. Actually, maybe it is. I haven't been able to stop thinking about what happened. What you said. And you thought you'd come apologize? Make yourself feel better? I wanted to understand. She laughed. No humor in it. Understand what? Poverty? You think you can understand it from up there in your corner office? I was poor once, James said quietly. Foster care. No parents. I worked my way through MIT on scholarships. I know what it's like to have nothing. Did you? She studied him with uncomfortable intensity. Did you really have nothing? Or did you have teachers who believed in you? Counselors who helped you? A system that bent to help promising young men succeed? James opened his mouth, then closed it. Mrs. Chen's face flashed in his mind. His MIT advisor. The venture capital partner who'd taken a chance. I thought so. She picked up her brush. I'm glad you made it out, but don't confuse having support with doing it alone. And don't assume everyone else who didn't make it just didn't work hard enough. That's not what I think, isn't it? She gestured around the garage. You work here 3 years and never once saw me. Never learned my name, never knew I existed, until I intersected with your world uncomfortably. Now suddenly you want to understand? Absolution? I want to know why you work overnight here, and why you're buying $8 pastries if you're barely scraping by. Because Tommy has autism. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. Therapy 3 times a week, 2 hours each. Insurance covers half. I pay the rest because if I don't, he loses progress. That pastry? His reward for going a whole week communicating with words instead of sounds. You know how big that is? How much work that takes? James felt something crack in his chest. I didn't. No? Of course not. People like you never do. She threw the brush in her bucket, water sloshing. I work 3 jobs. Hospital kitchen noon to 8. Here 10 to 3 a.m. Weekends, I clean houses in Brookline. I sleep 4 hours if I'm lucky. I eat ramen so Tommy can have vegetables. I wear clothes until they fall apart so he can have therapy. And you know what? I'd do it twice over because he's worth it. He deserves every chance. Her voice rose, echoing. Tears tracked down her face, but she wasn't breaking. She was furious. At him. At the system. At having to defend her choices. So, yes, she continued. Sometimes I scrape together $8 for a pastry shaped like a train, because that moment of joy is worth going hungry. And if that seems irresponsible to you, if that seems like poor planning to someone who casually spends more on coffee than I spend on groceries, then congratulations. You just realized the difference between poverty and comfort. James stood there, gutted, every assumption crumbling. What's your name? He asked quietly. She wiped her eyes. Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. I'm James. I know who you are. I see your name on the directory every night. She picked up her supplies. Look, I appreciate whatever guilt you're working through, but I can't help with it. I have to finish this floor and get to 2 more buildings before my shift ends. So if you'll excuse me, I'm sorry. The words stopped her. Not just for the bakery, James continued. For not seeing you. For 3 years of walking past you like you didn't exist. For building a fortune while people like you keep everything running and get nothing but invisible. Sarah studied him for a long moment. You want to know something? That's actually worse. At least when you didn't see me, I could tell myself you were just another oblivious rich guy. Now you see me, you feel sorry, and nothing actually changes. I still work 3 jobs. Tommy still needs therapy I can barely afford. You still have your corner office and expensive car. The only difference is now you get to feel enlightened about how hard other people have it. She pushed her cart toward the elevator, leaving James standing alone under fluorescent lights. And she was right. Absolutely right. Seeing wasn't enough. Understanding wasn't enough. The question was, what the hell was he supposed to do about it? James didn't sleep that night. He lay in his expensive bed in his expensive apartment, staring at shadows on the ceiling, Sarah's words playing on loop. Nothing actually changes. She was right. Awareness without action was just privileged guilt wearing a compassionate mask. At 3:47 a.m. he gave up on sleep, made coffee he didn't drink, opened his laptop and stared at spreadsheets without seeing numbers. His phone sat on the counter, silent. He picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. He pulled up the company directory, found the cleaning service contractor, night shift roster. There, employee ID, Dabra 4739. No name listed, just a number. Sarah Mitchell was a number in his system. For 3 years. James closed the laptop harder than necessary. The sun rose over Boston, indifferent to his crisis of conscience. His phone started buzzing with morning emails. The world kept spinning. Business continued. Nothing had changed, except him. Something in him had cracked, and he couldn't seal it back up. At 7:30 a.m., he was back at Maison Laurent. Not because he wanted to be, but because he needed to understand something. Sophie was opening, arranging pastries in the display case with practiced efficiency. Her face brightened when she saw him through the glass door. Mr. Parker, good morning. Your usual? James stepped inside. The smell of fresh bread and expensive coffee hit him, familiar and suddenly nauseating. No, I need to ask you something. Sophie's smile faltered slightly. Of course. What can I help you with? That woman, from Tuesday. Why did you treat her like that? The smile disappeared entirely. Sophie's hands stilled on the pastry tongs. I don't understand what you mean. Yes, you do. You humiliated her, deliberately, in front of everyone. Mr. Parker, I was simply maintaining our standards. Our standards? James leaned against the counter. You mean the standards that say some people deserve kindness and others don't? That money determines whether someone gets treated with basic dignity. Sophie's face had gone pale, then flushed. It's not personal. It's just how things work. This is an upscale establishment. We have a certain clientele. You came from foster care. James said it quietly, not as an accusation. A fact. I reviewed your employment application when I invested here. Group home in Dorchester until you aged out at 18. Worked 3 jobs yourself to get through community college. Sophie's hands were shaking now. She set down the tongs. What's your point? My point is you know exactly what it feels like to be looked down on, to be treated like you don't belong, and you did to her what was done to you. That's not, Sophie's voice cracked. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Silence stretched between them. Other customers would arrive soon. The morning rush would start. But right now it was just the two of them in this pristine space that reeked of exclusion. I worked so hard, Sophie finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. To get out, to become someone different, someone better. And every time someone like her walks in here, she stopped, swallowed hard. Every time I see someone like I used to be, it reminds me how close I am to falling back, how easily it could all disappear. So I push them away. I make sure everyone knows I'm not like them anymore, that I belong here now. But you don't, James said gently. You don't belong here, Sophie. Neither do I. We're just pretending. And we've convinced ourselves that the pretending is real. Then what am I supposed to do? Go back to cleaning offices? Serving coffee to people who look through me like I'm invisible? No. You're supposed to remember what that felt like and refuse to make anyone else feel it. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. It's not that simple. I know. James pulled out his wallet, withdrew $500 bills, and placed them on the counter. This is for the pastry you should have given her, and for every other person who comes in here short a few dollars for something that would mean everything to them. Not charity, kindness. There's a difference. Mr. Parker, I'm not your boss, Sophie. I'm just an investor. But I'm asking you, person to person, remember who you were. Don't become the people who looked down on you. He left before she could respond. Outside, the morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn. James stood on the sidewalk, uncertain where to go. His office felt wrong. His apartment felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. His phone rang. Jennifer. Morning. Just confirming. You're working from home today? Yeah. Something I need to handle. Okay. Also, Marcus Wellington called 3 times yesterday. Says it's urgent. James had forgotten about Marcus, about Friday drinks, about the entire world that existed before Tuesday morning. I'll call him back. He hung up. Didn't call Marcus back. Instead, he walked. Through Back Bay, across the Common, into neighborhoods he'd stopped seeing when he'd climbed high enough to avoid them. The city was waking up. People heading to work, kids walking to school, life happening at ground level. James found himself outside Boston Children's Hospital. The building loomed, all glass and modern architecture, a place where miracles happened and hearts broke in equal measure. He went inside without planning to, followed signs to the cafeteria, bought coffee and sat in a corner table watching. Medical residents in scrubs, faces exhausted, parents clutching coffee like lifelines, eyes hollow with fear and hope, staff moving with practiced efficiency. An entire ecosystem of suffering and healing that existed parallel to his world of profit margins and acquisition strategies. That's when he saw him. The boy, Tommy. He sat in the pediatric waiting area, visible through glass doors, arranging toy trains on the carpet with absolute concentration. A therapist sat nearby, observing, occasionally making notes. James's heart hammered. Where was Sarah? He stood, moved closer without thinking. Through the glass he could see Tommy's face, serious, focused, completely absorbed in his task. The trains had to be arranged just so, blue, red, yellow, green, over and over. The therapist said something. Tommy didn't look up, but his hands stilled. Then slowly, he pointed to the blue train. The therapist smiled, wrote something down. Tommy returned to his arrangement. Such a small thing, such an enormous victory. You can't be in this area without clearance. James turned. A nurse stood behind him, kind but firm. "I'm sorry, I was just—" He gestured vaguely toward Tommy. "I know him. His mother. Are you family?" "No, I just met them recently." The nurse's expression softened slightly. "Tommy's mom works in the kitchen. She comes up during her break to watch through the window sometimes." The nurse paused. "She's a good mother. You can tell the ones who really love their kids. They have this look, like they'd fight God himself if it meant their child got what they needed." James felt something lodge in his throat. "Where's the kitchen?" "Basement level. Staff only." Could you tell her someone's here to see her?" "James Parker." The nurse studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Wait here." James stood in the hallway, feeling conspicuous and out of place. Around him, medical staff moved with purpose. He was just an obstacle. 10 minutes passed. Then Sarah appeared, wearing a hairnet and food service uniform, confusion and wariness on her face. "What are you doing here?" "I saw Tommy. In therapy. I wasn't following you, James stopped. "I needed to see something real, and I ended up here. You need to leave. I'm working. I can't." "I know. I'm sorry. I just needed to tell you something." Sarah crossed her arms, defensive. "What?" "You were right. About everything. About me not understanding. About seeing not being enough. About the system being rigged." James took a breath. "I spent my whole life believing I earned everything through merit. That anyone could do what I did if they just worked hard enough, but I had help. So much help. People who believed in me, who opened doors, who gave me chances. And I forgot all of that. I convinced myself I did it alone because it made my success feel purer somehow." Sarah's expression hadn't softened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to hear it. Because Tommy deserves better than a world where his mother has to work 3 jobs just to give him basic therapy. Because I've spent 10 years getting rich by telling myself poverty is just laziness, and I was wrong. Congratulations on your revelation." Sarah's voice was flat. "But I have 30 minutes left on my break, and I need to eat something before my next shift, so if you're done seeking absolution, I want to help. We've been through this, not with money, not directly." James spoke quickly before she could walk away. "Let me understand first. Let me learn. I don't know what struggling actually means anymore. I forgot. Or maybe I never really knew. But I want to remember. I want to see what you see." "Why?" Sarah's eyes were hard. "So you can feel better about yourself? So you can go back to your world and tell yourself you're one of the good ones?" "Maybe," James admitted. "Probably. I don't know. But staying willfully blind is worse than stumbling toward awareness, isn't it?" Sarah stared at him for a long moment. "What exactly are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'd let me understand. Your schedule, your life, what it actually takes to survive. Not from a distance, not with money buffering me from reality. Just the truth. You want to follow me around? Watch me work? If you'll let me. Why would I let you do that? So you can make me feel like an anthropology project? So you can observe poverty like it's a zoo? Because maybe if someone like me actually understands, things might change. Not for you specifically. I know you don't want my charity. But for the system, for policy, for the way people like me make decisions that affect people like you without having any idea what those decisions actually mean." Sarah laughed, bitter and tired. "You really think that's how change works? One rich guy has an epiphany and suddenly the world gets better? No, but it's how it starts." James met her eyes. "You said seeing isn't enough. You're right, but it's the first step. And I'm asking for permission to take it." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Around them, the hospital hummed with its own rhythms. Through the window, Tommy arranged his trains, oblivious to adult complications. "One day," Sarah finally said. "You get one day, tomorrow's Saturday. I start at the hospital at 6 a.m., work until 2. Then I have houses to clean in Brookline until 8. Then I come back here for night shift. If you want to understand, you do all of it. No phone, no driver, no checking out when it gets uncomfortable. You do the work." James's heart hammered. Okay. Sarah looked almost disappointed, like she'd expected him to back down. "Just like that? Just like that? You won't last 2 hours. Maybe not, but I'll try." Sarah pulled a pen from her pocket, grabbed a napkin from a nearby table, scribbled an address. Meet me here. 5:45 a.m. Don't be late. And Mr. Parker? James. James. She met his eyes. Don't do this if you're just going to bail when it gets hard. I don't have energy for performative empathy. Either you're serious or you're wasting both our time. I'm serious. We'll see. She turned and walked back toward the kitchen, leaving James standing in the hallway with a napkin address and a challenge that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. What the hell had he just agreed to? But he knew. He'd agreed to step outside his carefully constructed bubble, to see what it cost to be Sarah Mitchell, and he suspected it would destroy every comfortable illusion he'd built about how the world really worked. Tomorrow, he'd find out if he had the courage to face it. James arrived at 5:42 a.m. The address Sarah had scribbled led to a narrow street in Roxbury, a neighborhood he'd driven through exactly 0 times in his decade living in Boston. Pre-dawn darkness made everything feel uncertain, threatening. His Tesla, he'd driven it without thinking, looked obscene parked between decades-old sedans, held together with duct tape and hope. He locked it 3 times. Sarah appeared from a building entrance, Tommy beside her, holding a lunchbox decorated with trains. She stopped when she saw the car. You drove a Tesla to Roxbury. I didn't think. No, you didn't. She walked past him. Come on. We take the bus. The bus? You wanted to understand. This is understanding. Cars cost money. Insurance, gas, parking, repairs. Buses cost $2.70 a trip. Do the math. James followed her to the corner stop. Tommy walked between them, humming softly, his free hand making small, repetitive gestures. The boy hadn't acknowledged James's presence. He doesn't do well with new people, Sarah said quietly, reading James's expression. Don't take it personally. His world works better when it's predictable. The bus arrived. Yellowed interior lights, torn seats, the sharp chemical smell of industrial cleaner fighting a losing battle against years of human existence. Sarah swiped a pass card twice, once for her and once for Tommy. James fumbled for cash. $2.70, the driver said, not looking at him. James had 3 20s in his wallet, nothing smaller. The driver's expression shifted to annoyance. Exact change. I can use a card? Machine's broken. People behind James were getting impatient. Sarah made a small sound of frustration, swiped her card a 3rd time. I'll pay you back. Just sit down. The bus lurched forward. James grabbed a pole, nearly lost his balance. Sarah and Tommy sat near the back, her arm around him protectively. James stood, aware that taking a seat meant displacing someone who probably needed it more. 23 minutes of stops and starts. James watched the city wake up through grimy windows. People heading to jobs that would never make them rich, just make them tired. Sarah stared straight ahead, jaws set. They got off at the hospital stop. Tommy's humming had gotten louder, more agitated. He doesn't like buses, Sarah explained, though James hadn't asked. Too many sounds, too much chaos. But we don't have a choice. Inside the hospital, Sarah led them through service entrances James had never known existed. Concrete hallways, flickering fluorescents, the basement level where food got prepared away from patients' eyes. This is Maria. Sarah introduced him to another woman in food service uniform. She's watching Tommy until his therapy starts. Maria, this is James. He's shadowing me today. Maria looked James up and down, assessment quick and accurate. Rich boy playing poor for a day. Something like that, James admitted. Try not to break anything expensive. Maria took Tommy's hand gently. Come on, mijo. Let's get you breakfast before Ms. Rachel. Tommy went without resistance, comfortable with routine. Sarah watched him go with an expression James couldn't quite read. Relief and pain mixed together. You get 4 hours, Sarah said, turning to James. Before his therapy. If something happens and he needs me, I leave everything. Understand? Understood. Good. Now move. We're already behind. The next 6 hours shattered every assumption James had about work. Not the concept of work. He understood long hours, mental exhaustion, pressure. But this was different. This was physical labor that made his muscles scream by hour 2. Lifting industrial pots filled with soup that fed 200 people. Scrubbing surfaces that had been scrubbed 1,000 times before and would be scrubbed 1,000 times again. moving constantly because standing still meant falling behind, and falling behind meant someone didn't eat. By 9 a.m., James's hands were raw despite gloves. His back ached from bending over industrial sinks. Sweat soaked through his shirt. He'd worn workout clothes, thinking himself clever. Sarah worked beside him in the same uniform she'd worn on the bus, not a complaint crossing her lips. "Lunch is at 11, she said around 10:30. 20 minutes. There's a break room. What do you usually do?" "Check on Tommy, eat if there's time." At 11, Sarah led him to the pediatric therapy wing. Through the observation window, they watched Tommy with his therapist. The boy was building with blocks, his movements careful and deliberate. "He's doing well," James said. "Today. Tomorrow might be different. That's autism. Progress isn't linear." Sarah unwrapped a peanut butter sandwich, ate mechanically. "You want to know what it costs? $150 per session. Insurance covers $60. I pay $90, 3 times a week. That's $10.80 a month just for Tommy to have a shot at a normal life." James did the math. $10.80 was more than he spent on coffee in a month. And that's just therapy. There's medication. Special foods because his sensory issues mean he can't eat certain textures. School supplies because regular ones overwhelm him. Sarah finished her sandwich in 4 bites. "People like you see the final bill and think we're irresponsible. You never see the 1,000 tiny choices that add up. The birthday cake I couldn't buy? That was my grocery money for 3 days. I chose his therapy over my meals. Again." "Sarah." "Break's over." She stood, crumpled the plastic bag her sandwich came in. Back to work. The afternoon was worse than the morning. James's body was betraying him. Muscles cramping, exhaustion making him clumsy. He dropped a tray of clean dishes. They didn't break, but Sarah's supervisor appeared instantly. "Mitchell, who is this?" "He's shadowing, learning about hospital operations." The supervisor, a woman named Patricia with zero tolerance in her eyes, looked at James like he was an incompetent child. "If he can't keep up, he needs to leave. This isn't a playground." "He'll keep up." After Patricia left, James expected sympathy. Sarah gave him none. "You drop things when you're tired. So do I. Difference is when I drop things, I might lose my job. You get to go home and forget about it." "I'm trying. Trying isn't enough here. Either you do it or you don't." At 2 p.m., James had worked 8 hours. His body screamed for rest. Sarah's day was 1/3 finished. "Bus to Brookline," she said, gathering her things. "We clean 3 houses, 4 hours minimum." "How do you—" James stopped. Stupid question. "How do I what? Keep going? Because I don't have a choice. Tommy needs therapy. Tommy needs food. Tommy needs me alive, so I keep going." The bus to Brookline took 40 minutes. James dozed despite himself, jerked awake when Sarah shook his shoulder. "We're here." Brookline was different. Tree-lined streets, houses that would sell for millions. The kind of neighborhood James aspired to when he was climbing. Now it just looked obscene. They walked 3 blocks to the first house. Sarah pulled out keys. "Mrs. Henderson pays me $30 an hour. Cash. She's never here. Second home. Spends most time in Florida. I clean every Saturday. 4 hours." Inside, the house was pristine already. James couldn't see what needed cleaning. "Rich people dirt is different than regular dirt," Sarah said, reading his confusion. "It's invisible, but they'll notice if I miss it." She handed him supplies. "Bathrooms. 2 upstairs, 1 down. Toilet, sink, mirror, floor. Everything gets disinfected." Cleaning toilets belonging to strangers was more humbling than any boardroom negotiation. James scrubbed tile grout with a toothbrush while Sarah vacuumed rooms that held furniture worth more than she'd earn in 5 years. They finished Mrs. Henderson's house at 6 p.m. Sarah left a note about a loose cabinet hinge, locked up, and they walked to the next house. James's legs barely functioned. His hands were so raw he'd started bleeding through the gloves. He wanted to quit, wanted to call his driver, go home, take a hot shower, and forget this experiment in poverty tourism. But Sarah kept moving, so he did too. The second house belonged to the Prescott family. Home, parents present, 3 young kids who'd torn through the place like hurricanes. Real mess, real work. Mrs. Prescott met them at the door, barely glanced at Sarah, didn't acknowledge James at all. "The playroom is disaster. Kids had a party. She handed Sarah a list. And please use the lavender cleaner in the bathrooms this time. The lemon irritates my husband's allergies. Of course. Sarah took the list without reaction. Mrs. Prescott disappeared upstairs. Sarah turned to James. The lavender costs $3 more. She's never reimbursed me for it. I buy it anyway, because the alternative is losing this job. They cleaned. James moved through fog of exhaustion. At one point, he sat on the bathroom floor and nearly cried from the pain radiating through his back. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Get up. I need a minute. You don't get minutes. Not here. Get up. James stood, kept cleaning. They finished at 8:15 p.m. Mrs. Prescott inspected their work, found nothing wrong, and handed Sarah cash. $120 for 2 hours of brutal labor. Same time next week, Mrs. Prescott said, already scrolling on her phone. Outside, Sarah counted the bills, divided them carefully between different envelopes in her bag. Rent, therapy, groceries, utilities. Where does your money go? James asked, too tired to care if the question was rude. I make about $3,200 a month total, all jobs combined. Rent is $1,400. Therapy is $1,080. Food is $400 if I'm careful. Utilities, phone, Tommy's medications, another $400. Bus passes, $80. That leaves me with $240 for everything else. Clothes, emergencies, savings. She laughed hollow. I haven't saved money in 3 years. I'm one unexpected expense away from total collapse. Always. They took the bus back toward the hospital. James checked his phone for the first time all day. 4:47 a.m. when he'd last looked. Now 9:02 p.m. 16 hours. Sarah had 4 more to go. At the hospital, Sarah changed into her cleaning uniform. James could barely stand. You should go home, Sarah said. It wasn't kindness, just fact. I said I'd do the whole day. And you have. You've worked 16 hours. Congratulations. You've experienced 1 day of my life. She grabbed her cleaning cart. But you get to go home now. Sleep in tomorrow. Recover. I do this again in 8 hours, and the day after, and the day after that. Forever. So yeah, you've seen it. Now you can go back to your world and feel enlightened. James watched her push the cart down the hallway, shoulders set despite obvious exhaustion. He'd seen. He'd understood. And Sarah was right. Nothing had changed. He could leave, go home, forget. Or he could figure out what came after understanding. James pulled out his phone, dialed Jennifer despite the late hour. Clear my schedule. All of it, for the next month. Sir? Everything. Patterson, the board meetings. All of it. I have work to do. What kind of work? James watched Sarah disappear around a corner, invisible to everyone except him. The kind that actually matters. James spent the next week like a man possessed. Not going back to normal. Not returning to the comfortable numbness of boardrooms and profit margins. Instead, he tore through his company's policies with surgical precision, searching for every place where people like Sarah were being crushed by his elegant systems. The cleaning staff contracts came first. Companies paid workers minimum wage, $15 an hour in Massachusetts, and charged Parker Ventures triple that. James renegotiated every contract. Direct employment, $25 an hour, full health insurance with 0 deductibles, coverage for dependents including therapy services. His CFO nearly had a stroke. That's $3 million annually in additional costs. Then we absorb it. Cut executive bonuses if we have to. James, the board will never... I don't care what the board wants. This is what we're doing. But even as he made changes, something gnawed at him. He was still doing it from above. Still being the benevolent billionaire dispensing mercy from his tower. Sarah's words haunted him. Nothing actually changes. He'd seen her twice since that Saturday. Once in passing at the hospital, she'd nodded, nothing more. Once in his building's parking garage. She'd been cleaning. He'd been leaving late. Their eyes met. She'd turned away first. He wanted to tell her about the policy changes. Wanted her approval, her acknowledgement that he was different now. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still performing empathy instead of living it. Thursday afternoon, James was reviewing acquisition proposals when Jennifer burst in without knocking. Sir, there's a situation. Hospital called. One of our cleaning staff, Sarah Mitchell. There's been an emergency with her son. James was on his feet before she finished the sentence. What happened? I don't have details. just that she left mid-shift and James grabbed his jacket and ran. He made it to Boston Children's Hospital in 12 minutes, found the emergency wing, demanded information from nurses who looked at him like he was insane until he pulled out his ID, his business card, claiming he was Sarah's employer. Not true, technically, but it got him directions. 4th floor, pediatric observation. He found Sarah in the hallway outside a room, sitting on the floor against the wall, head in her hands. She looked destroyed. Sarah. She looked up, eyes red and swollen. For a second, she seemed confused about why he was there. Then her face hardened. "You need to leave." "What happened?" "Is Tommy?" "He had a seizure at school. They called an ambulance. He's stable now, but they want to keep him overnight for observation and tests." Her voice was flat, mechanical. "The ambulance ride alone is going to cost me $800. The tests will be thousands more, even with insurance. I don't have it. I don't have any of it." James pulled out his wallet without thinking. "I can—" "Don't." The word came out like a gunshot. "Don't you dare." "Sarah, your son needs—" "I know what my son needs." She was on her feet now, fury replacing numbness. "You think I don't know? You think I need you to tell me my child needs medical care I can't afford? I'm trying to help." "No, you're trying to make yourself feel better. You spent one single day, seeing how I live, and now you think you understand. You think you can just write a check and fix everything?" Her voice had risen. A nurse glanced over, concerned, but didn't intervene. "That's not—" "It is exactly that." Sarah's hands were shaking. "You want to know what your money would cost me? My dignity, my self-respect, the knowledge that I can take care of my son myself. You take that away when you swoop in like some kind of savior, because it means I failed. It means all the work, all the sacrifice, all the nights I went hungry. It wasn't enough. I wasn't enough." "You are enough," James said desperately. "Sarah, you're the strongest person I've ever met. Then why am I here?" Tears streamed down her face now. "Why is my son in a hospital bed and I can't pay for it? Why do I work 3 jobs and still can't cover an emergency? If I'm so strong, why does the system keep beating me down?" James stood there, gutted, because she was right. She was absolutely right. "I don't have an answer," he said quietly. "Of course you don't, because there isn't one. The system is broken, James. It's designed to crush people like me and reward people like you, and your guilt doesn't change that. Your 1 day of manual labor doesn't change that. Even your policy changes, which I heard about, everyone's talking about them, don't fundamentally change that." "Then what do I do?" The question came out raw. "Tell me. Because I can't unsee what I've seen. I can't go back to not caring. But every time I try to help, I make it worse. So what the hell am I supposed to do?" Sarah leaned back against the wall, exhaustion replacing anger. "Stop trying to save individuals. Start changing the system that makes saving necessary." "I don't understand." "Yes, you do. You just don't want to." She slid back down to sitting. "Your company renegotiated cleaning contracts. That's good. But you still outsource to the lowest bidder for everything else. You still make acquisition decisions that close small businesses and destroy jobs because the numbers work. You still move money around to minimize taxes instead of paying into the social systems that might actually help people. You see me now, James, but you still don't see everyone else." The words hit like physical blows. A doctor appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Mitchell? Tommy's asking for you." Sarah stood, wiped her eyes. "I need to go." "Sarah, please leave. I can't do this right now." She disappeared into the room. The door clicked shut. James stood alone in the hallway, everything he'd thought he'd learned crumbling around him. He'd been so proud of his awareness, his policy changes, his willingness to see. But Sarah was right. He'd been performing transformation, not living it. James didn't go home. He drove to Marcus Wellington's house in Beacon Hill, the kind of address that announced wealth before you even saw the property. Marcus answered the door in casual clothes, surprised. "Parker, what are you doing here? I thought you were ghosting me." "We need to talk about Sarah Mitchell." Marcus's expression shifted, wariness replacing surprise. "Who?" "Don't play stupid. Sarah Mitchell, Tommy Mitchell's mother. Your son." The color drained from Marcus's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yeah, you do. MIT party, 8 years ago. She was 19, you were 22. You got her pregnant and walked away. That's a lie. Is it? James pushed past him into the house. Because I can find records if I need to. But I'd rather you just tell me the truth. Marcus closed the door, glanced toward the stairs where his perfect wife and perfect legitimate children were probably having a perfect evening. Keep your voice down, he hissed. Why? Afraid your family will find out you abandoned a child? That you have a son who needs therapy you could easily afford while his mother works 3 jobs to survive? She never asked for help. Because you made it clear there wouldn't be any. James was shouting now, didn't care. You were from one of the richest families in Boston. She was a scholarship kid. What was she supposed to do? Sue you? Take you to court with what money? You knew she had no power, so you just disappeared. Let her handle it alone. Marcus's jaw was tight. What do you want? Money? Is this blackmail? I don't want your money. I want you to understand what your choices cost. James pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a photo he'd taken that first day, Sarah counting coins at the bakery counter. This is what abandonment looks like. This is the woman who gave up a full ride to Johns Hopkins to raise your son, who works 17-hour days so he can have therapy for the autism you gave him, who can't buy him a birthday pastry without doing the math. I didn't know he was autistic. Would it have mattered? James's voice was quiet now, deadly. Would you have helped if he was neurotypical? Or would you still have protected your perfect image and let her drown? Silence stretched between them. What do you want me to do? Marcus finally asked, defeated. I want you to be a man. Set up a trust for Tommy. Medical expenses, therapy, education, not in your name, through a lawyer, anonymous. She'll never know it came from you. But he deserves support from his father even if you're too much of a coward to claim him. And if I don't, then I'll make sure everyone knows. Your wife, your firm, the social circles you care so much about. I'll burn your reputation to the ground. Marcus studied him. Why do you care so much? Are you sleeping with her? James felt rage flash white-hot. That's what you think? That the only reason a man would care about a woman's suffering is if he wants something from her? Isn't it always? No. Sometimes it's because she made you see that everything you built was constructed on other people's backs. Sometimes it's because you realize the success you're so proud of came at a cost you never acknowledged. Sometimes it's because you finally understand that being a good person isn't about writing checks. It's about not creating situations where checks are necessary in the first place. James headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. You have 1 week. Set up the trust or I start making calls. He left Marcus standing in his perfect house, looking small despite all his wealth. The next morning, James called an emergency board meeting. His board of directors, 8 people who'd helped him build Parker Ventures into what it was, sat around the conference table looking confused and slightly annoyed at the 7 a.m. summons. I'm making changes, James started. Fundamental ones, to how we do business. We heard about the cleaning contracts, one board member said. James, we appreciate the sentiment, but $3 million in additional costs isn't enough. We're doing more. He pulled up a presentation he'd worked on all night. The board stared. You want to add family medical leave? Subsidized childcare? Education assistance? The CFO shook his head. James, we'll lose our competitive edge. Our competitive edge is built on exploitation. We save money by not paying workers fairly. We maximize profits by externalizing costs onto employees and communities. That ends now. The shareholders will revolt. I'm the majority shareholder. And I say, this is what we're doing. James. This from Victoria Chen, the oldest board member who'd been with him since the beginning. What happened? This isn't like you. That's the problem, James said quietly. It's exactly like me, like who I was, like who we all are. We've built empires by not seeing the people we step on to build them, and I can't do it anymore. This is business suicide. No, this is being human. And if our business model only works by dehumanizing people, then we deserve to fail. The room erupted in argument. James let them yell. Then he spoke, voice cutting through the noise. I spent 16 hours working as a cleaner. I made $128 for a day that destroyed my body. Meanwhile, I made more than that in passive income while I was scrubbing toilets. Explain to me how that's fair. Explain to me how we justify that. That's how capitalism works. Then maybe capitalism is broken. Maybe we've built a system that rewards the wrong things. And maybe we have enough power to start fixing it. Victoria studied him. You really mean this? I've never meant anything more in my life. It'll cost us millions. We have millions to spare. More silence. Then Victoria nodded. I'm in. Victoria! The CFO looked horrified. I'm 73 years old. I have more money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes. And James is right. We've been comfortable not seeing. Time to open our eyes. One by one, grudgingly, the board agreed. Not because they were suddenly enlightened, but because James wouldn't back down, and Victoria's support gave them cover. The changes would start immediately. Higher wages, better benefits, ethical sourcing requirements for all contractors, investment in community programs. Would it solve everything? No. Would it change the fundamental nature of capitalism? No. But it was a start. 3 months later, James returned to Maison Laurent. Sophie was still there, but different. The hardness in her eyes had softened. She smiled when he entered, genuine this time. Mr. Parker, the usual? Actually, I was hoping to buy every pastry you have. For the community center down the street. They're having a kids' event. Sophie's eyes widened. Then she smiled. On the house. Consider it my contribution. Sophie, I've been thinking about what you said. About not becoming the people who look down on me. She started boxing up pastries. I've been trying to do better. It's hard, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. James took the pastries to the community center. Watched kids, including some who were homeless, some whose parents struggled like Sarah, grab treats with delight. No shame, no judgment, just kindness. He didn't stay for thanks. That wasn't the point. Instead, he drove to Boston Children's Hospital. Found Sarah in the kitchen on her break. Can we talk? She looked wary, but nodded. They walked to an empty hallway. Tommy's bills got paid, she said without preamble. All of them, including the ambulance. Someone set up an anonymous trust. Was that you? No, but I know who did it. Understanding dawned. His father. I can't confirm that. But hypothetically, if someone finally decided to take responsibility for his choices, that would be good, right? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want charity. It's not charity, it's accountability. It's what should have happened 8 years ago. James paused. I also can't confirm that this hypothetical trust will cover Tommy's therapy and education indefinitely. But hypothetically, if it did, that would be fair compensation for what you've given up. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, tears falling. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything. I'm just witnessing, making sure the right thing happens. James handed her an envelope. Also, we have openings in our educational assistance program for employees and contractors. Full tuition if you wanted to finish your degree. On your terms, when you're ready, if you're ready. Sarah opened the envelope, stared at the program details. This is real? It's real, not charity. You'd be an employee earning a scholarship through your work. Nothing you need to feel guilty about. James. She didn't seem to know what to say. You were right about everything, he said quietly. I was performing empathy. I was trying to save individuals instead of changing systems. So I'm trying to do better now. Not for recognition, not to feel good about myself, but because it's right. Because people like you deserve better than a world that makes you choose between dignity and survival. Sarah hugged him. It surprised them both. She pulled back quickly, wiping her eyes. Thank you for seeing, for actually changing instead of just feeling guilty. I learned from the best. She smiled. Real, warm, hopeful. Tommy's therapy is working. He's communicating more, even starting to make friends. That's wonderful. And I've been thinking about going back to school. I miss medicine. I miss feeling like I'm building something instead of just surviving. You should, when you're ready, whatever you need. They stood in the hallway, 2 people from different worlds who'd collided and changed each other. I need to get back to work, Sarah said finally. Yeah, me too. She walked away, shoulders lighter than he'd ever seen them. James left the hospital feeling something he hadn't felt in years, like maybe he was becoming someone worth being. Not perfect, not a savior, just someone trying to see people clearly and respond with humanity instead of hierarchy. 6 months after that morning at the bakery, James stood in Roxbury at a neighborhood meeting about affordable housing development. He wasn't there as an investor. He was there as a community member, listening to people like Sarah explain what they needed, not imposing solutions from above, but learning from below. Across the room, he saw Sarah. She was in scrubs, still working at the hospital, but part-time now while she took classes. Tommy was in school, thriving in a program that understood his needs. Their eyes met. She nodded. He nodded back. No words needed. Just mutual recognition between two people who'd learned the same hard lesson. True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity, respect, and the willingness to see others as fully human. James had been rich for years, but he was only now learning what it meant to be whole. The lesson. Sometimes the most profound poverty isn't empty pockets. It's empty hearts that can't see past themselves. James had millions but lived in spiritual bankruptcy, counting money while people around him counted their worth in his indifference. Sarah had nothing but taught him everything, that dignity isn't charity you give, it's respect you owe, that being seen matters more than being saved, that the real measure of your life isn't what you accumulate, but whether you bothered to notice the invisible people your success was built upon. The greatest gift you can give isn't money, it's the willingness to have your comfortable worldview shattered, to sit with the discomfort of your own complicity, and to change not just what you do, but who you are. Because in the end, we're all one unexpected crisis away from counting coins ourselves. And when that moment comes, we'll finally understand what Sarah always knew. Kindness isn't what you give when it's easy. It's what you deserve when it's hard. See people. Really see them. Before life forces you to understand what it means to be invisible yourself.